right, so let's get going. First of all, introduce yourself, tell the people who you are and why you're running.
Okay. My name is Michael Savoca, and I'm running to represent the 20th Legislative District of the state of Washington in the State House. 62 years old, and I live in the town of Rainier, 12630 Rainier Acres Road. I've lived there with my wife and children for about 30 years. Well, the kids have grown, so they're in and out from time to time, but my wife and I built the house. We didn't general contract it, we built it with our bare hands. So it's very small, it's very modest, and we're a little bit proud of it. I'm running for the position of 20th Legislative District Representative because I disagree with my opponent, Richard DeBolt, on some fundamental issues. And those disagreements came into focus as I visited with him and other representatives over the course of the last few years. And those differences center upon the issue of whether or not we are going to have government of the people, or whether or not we're going to have government of the corporations, the unions, and the people who are billionaires in our country. Now, all of those organizations and associations that I just mentioned are darn well entitled to representation and participation. But what they're not entitled to is ownership. They're not entitled to overwhelm the common man and the common woman as they participate in the process. And so I am here because Richard DeBolt did not support House Joint Resolution 4001. He does not support either a constitutional convention or what's called a memorial, which is where the several states ask Congress to write an amendment, which then 3/4 of the states must approve. He does not believe that money has corrupted the system, is what he told me in the presence of other representatives. He believes that the solution to money corruption, if there is any, is more money, because he equates money, as he has explained it to me, with free speech. And I do not. I believe that if you say money is free speech, then what that means is some people get to scream while other people are forced to whisper. And so that's why I'm running for representative. I also want to show that a person can be elected to public office, and they can do so without being beholden to very rich, very powerful interests. Now, I don't hate Boeing. I own Boeing stock, okay? I don't hate unions. I've been a union shop steward, okay? But when I am elected, if you call me on line 1, and then 5 minutes later or 5 seconds later, the communications director for Boeing calls on line 2, I don't put you on hold and go to the big shot. You are as important as he is. And I tell the guy from Boeing, I'll call you back later, or I put him or her on hold. And that's the way it needs to be. I need to be owned in equal measure by the voters of the 20th Legislative District, not a rich person in New York City like a Michael Bloomberg, a multi-billionaire, a lefty, or a Sheldon Adelson, a righty from Las Vegas, multi-billionaire who owns gazads of casinos, even in Macau, he owns casinos, okay? Those people, I mean, if either one of those guys called in and said, Mike, we really think you're a swell guy and we'd like to, give you $10,000 or $100,000 for your campaign, I'd say, George, Sheldon, nice, but it'd have to be only a $5 donation because that's all I accept, and you'll have to move to Chehalis because I only accept $5 donations from people who live in the district. That's why I'm running. That's who I am.
You stated no party preference when you filed, so I just wonder why and which of the two parties do you feel you are more closely aligned with if you had to choose one of the two?
Well, there's a side of me that's a libertarian. So when it comes to individual rights, you could almost look at what the Libertarian Party says and guess that that's what I say. There's a side of me that is green. I'm a tree hugger. I believe in environmentalism. I do believe in human-induced climate change. To me, the science is settled, and we are heading as a society towards a cliff. And if we don't do something, it'll constitute the greatest threat to national security that we have ever seen. There's a side of me that is a Democrat, in terms of I believe in doing social good, I believe in pro-social behavior. I think we can do things to better our society as a group. And then there's a side of me that's a Republican that hates excessive regulation, that believes in a balanced budget amendment, that believes in individual initiative, and I like to hunt and fish. So I don't like political parties. I have said that I am not a member of any party because parties ask for sometimes, often, loyalty to party over loyalty to country and loyalty to state. So I am independent of political parties for those reasons. And if you ask me a question, whether it's gay rights or marijuana or the Second Amendment, I will answer your question truthfully. I don't tailor my answer to get votes. I'm going to put it out there as I'm able to see it and let the chips fall where they may. I am not a member of any political party. None of them would have me. I used to be a PCO for the Democrats, and I got in arguments with them over the Second Amendment and abortion. I support a woman's right to choose, right, in the first 2 trimesters, and I think that late-term abortion, partial birth abortion, is morally reprehensible and wrong. Personally, I think women ought to decide the issue. We ought to, get men deciding a woman's issue. It's the women have the authority here. Is also distasteful for me. And then, the Second Amendment. I'm a lifetime member of the NRA, and I'm a member of the Sierra Club. How many people do you meet like that? So I just don't fit. I over-answered your question, didn't I?
You answered it just fine.
My wife says I was vaccinated with a phonograph needle. You all may be too young to know what that is, but there was this thing many years ago that would play something called a record, had a needle in it. I talk too much. Okay. I guess I'm a little nervous.
Do you think the combination, like your policy on the $5 donations, along with not having a party, does that destroy your chances of getting elected?
No, I think it improves it. Mm-hmm. And here's why. The way, how do I say this? The way you beat a very powerful opponent, and I'm not just talking about Richard DeBolt, I'm talking about the system. I am against a corrupt system. The system that we have, the political system we have in this country is absolutely rotten. I don't think a saint could stand up against it. I don't fault Richard DeBolt, Frank Chop, or any of these people. They swim in a sea that would corrupt anybody, and some of them have probably managed to avoid corruption. I'm not accusing any one of those men or women from being corrupt, but I think it's extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, to avoid corruption. So, what was the question again?
Do you think that the combination of those 2 things destroy your chances?
So, if you want to fight people that are in this kind of pervasive system, you don't fight them by beating them at their game. You beat them by making them play your game. And so my game is that I stand in front of Walmart like I did a couple of weeks ago. And day after day I shake the hands of 50 to 100 people a day. And I hand out my brochure. I went to the Southwest Washington Fair, the Longview Kelso Fair. I did the same thing. I put up handmade signs all over the county. I accept only $5 donations, and people look at me and say, what? And I say, and I'm also going to return half my salary as a scholarship to kids. So I don't think it hurts me. I actually think that it helps me.
Okay. Shift gears a little bit.
Am I right? I hope. I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to ask for what the right answer. Teacher, is that the right answer?
You're right in your own mind.
In my mind, yes.
You're a former school board director, correct?
Yes.
So I'm interested in your thoughts on the issue of education funding in the legislature and what you might bring to the table in the form of ideas if you were elected.
Yeah, well, here's another example of where I'm probably not going to win a lot of popularity points. But number one, we have to fully fund education. Underline the word have to. I listened to 3 representatives in my district talk about how we've given enough. That's what they said during their electronic town hall meeting. By the way, I won't hold telephone town hall meetings. I will hold real town hall meetings in every major community where people can sit this close to me and either pat me on the shoulder or shake a finger in my face. So they were insinuating in this electronic town hall meeting that, geez, we've done this. Don't you think we've done enough? Well, excuse me. The Supreme Court is the Supreme Court. This is what makes it a civil society. They don't have an army, right? They don't go out and hire, the Crips or the Bloods or the Mafia to enforce. The court says it and you do it because we're civilized people. We must fully fund education. Education, according to our Constitution, is the paramount duty of the state. Paramount, it means it's number one. And so that's going to mean, probably, and I've read a lot of stuff, and I got to tell you, I hear a variety of numbers, but we're talking about $2 billion, okay? Give or take $1 billion. I shouldn't be lighthearted with this, I'm sorry.
No, you're great.
But, it's hard to know, but it's going to take, $1 billion or more, maybe $2 billion. We're not going to do that, okay, without broadening the tax system. Okay, so there's the third rail of politics in the state of Washington. Oh my God, he wants to increase taxes, and he even favors an income tax. I do. So we are going to have to put more teachers in the classroom. Washington State is 47th. By the way, 50 isn't the top, the best 50 states. It's 3 from the bottom. We're 47th in the United States of America in terms of student to teacher ratio in the classroom, and also the people that assist teachers, who are very important. So we're in the company of Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana, where people have much lower education rates and much lower economic status. Is that where we want to be in the great state of, I consider my state, my adopted state, I've lived here almost 40 years, I think that Washington State's the greatest state in the country. Is that where we want to be? I am 100% committed to education. But at the same token, we don't want to waste money. I participated in the termination of people who were public employees. Some people say it can't be done. Malarkey. All you have to do is do your homework. You find somebody that's not working to spec, you tell them what they need to do to improve, you give them a period of time, you come back, you say you've done it or you haven't. If you haven't, you document that again, and then you say to them, you can't work here anymore because you're not fulfilling the employment, the expectations of the employer, which is the taxpayer. Okay? So we must make sure that we spend the taxpayers' dollars wisely. More wisely than even if it were our own. A lot of people say spend the money as if it were your own. Boy, I wouldn't want to do that. There's sometimes I impulse buy. It has to be to the highest standards imaginable. So then what we do is, once we have done those things to find efficiencies, we have to make sure that everybody is paying their fair share. And I have in this briefcase, and if you want to take the time, I can show you how the state of Washington, through special interests, has allowed very wealthy people and corporations in any one year to avoid, okay, $2 billion of tax revenue. I can show you the names of the companies and the amounts. Oh, excuse me, but that's for 2009, because after that, we made it illegal. We said it was proprietary information. There's a bill before the Senate that would make all of these giveaways public information, but right now they're saying it's secret, like Betty Crocker's formula for a cake. It's ridiculous. The taxpayers have a right to know. And so we broaden the tax base. We take a look at an income tax. First of all, the B&O tax is a mess, because the B&O tax doesn't tax profits, it taxes gross receipts, which means we're punishing startups. The B&O tax comes from before the Great Depression. No, around the Great 1930s. Okay? So we need a new tax system that is fair to small corporations, small companies, and we need a tax system that broadens the tax base. One that does not, allow multinational corporations to shift royalty payments from Seattle to Reno, Nevada, and avoid 30% or 15% of the taxes they're due to support education and roads in the state of Washington. So I wouldn't make these changes without talking with Boeing, Microsoft, PACCAR, and all the rest of these corporations. I think people that we are asking to foot the bill are stakeholders, and they have the right to participate, and I wouldn't jam people with this. I want them to participate willingly. I grew up in a time when there was something called noblesse oblige. And what that means is that the wealthiest, the smartest, the most powerful, the elite, have an obligation to society and the rest of us. And I believe in the basic goodness of the people who lead industry in America. And I think if you sit down with them and you look at the numbers and you paint out, you pencil out what the future looks like, they're going to say, you're right. Washington State has a tax system that is absolutely dysfunctional. If the tax system were this table, it would be missing a leg. And one of the legs, the one that we rely on the most, the sales tax, looks like a roller coaster ride, depending upon consumption, depending upon whether or not we're going through a recession, or boom times. You can't run a company, you can't run a state, you can't educate kids relying on state sales tax as such a huge revenue source. So we fix education by making sure that we have, found the efficiencies and held people to the highest standards, and then we obtain the revenues we need so that we can hire the best and the brightest people, and we hold people accountable for results. But I absolutely support McCleary, and I absolutely support full funding of education, and I absolutely support broadening the tax base. The income tax, by the way, wouldn't touch, in my opinion, anybody under $250,000 or $100,000 or $150,000. I mean, I think we've got to look at numbers like that so that the vast majority of the middle class aren't hit, because they already carry, Washington State has a regressive tax system. So the people who are middle class and lower class, working class, whatever term you want to use, they're already carrying a huge burden. So we're going to ask the brightest, the best, the hardest working, the most inventive, the entrepreneurs, we're going to ask them to step up and help do these things. We must.
Let's change gears and talk about marijuana a little bit. Obviously that's a hot topic. There's a couple cities, Centralia being one of them, that for a while resisted and thought that they'd have the right to ban businesses from their jurisdiction.
Right.
What's your personal opinion on that issue, and any other thoughts you might have on legalized recreational?
I worked in the field of criminal justice most of my life. So I've been in the courtroom. I've worked with people that have dealt drugs. I have dealt with people in DOC at Monroe State Reformatory when I was a guard who were in possession of alcohol, marijuana, and other drugs. I have seen the drug issue from many different sides. The war on drugs is an abject failure. Okay? It hasn't worked. It won't work. No matter who you put in charge, how smart they are, what a great team they have, it is fundamentally and theoretically a bankrupt way of dealing with drug use and drug abuse. That's number one. That's a broad statement about drugs. In regards to marijuana, I have had to take physical control in a correctional setting of people who are intoxicated on alcohol. And I've had to put my hand on the arm of people who have been smoking marijuana. I would much rather handle the people that have been smoking marijuana than alcohol. From my experience in my community, in a correctional setting, and in other settings, alcohol is a more dangerous drug than marijuana. Now, that doesn't mean marijuana is good, okay? Just to set the record straight, yes, I have smoked marijuana, and I'll tell you the circumstances, and no, I do not. I could pass a P test now, 6 months from now, 6 years ago, 6 months ago. Two things. I am a child of the 60s, take that for what it's worth, and for a brief period of time, because of a medical condition, I had access to a prescription for medical marijuana. Had not smoked marijuana in more years, like since the dinosaurs roamed the earth, but I was in a lot of pain, and so I tried it. And what I found was it's not a good drug for me. I didn't enjoy it. I find it makes me become too much like me. It makes me very introspective, very self-critical. It's not my idea of fun. A shot of whiskey is a lot more fun than a shot. But nonetheless, I don't believe that the average marijuana use rises to the level where we want to spend $30,000 a year to put a man or woman in prison because they get caught with a pound or an ounce or 10 joints of marijuana. That's crazy. I got better things to do with $30,000 because somebody's smoking reefer. Plus, there's the tax revenue. So I don't like marijuana. I don't smoke marijuana. I know people who do like it. I know people who smoke marijuana that you wouldn't believe the things they do for a living that involve responsibility, that involve working within the field of criminal justice, that involve, all walks of life. And they limit their marijuana smoking to the weekends. They don't go to work stoned. They are good people in the various sectors of the things that they do. So just like alcohol and other things, there need to be rules and regulations. But I entirely support the decriminalization, the legalization of marijuana. I think we need medical marijuana available to the people that use it because the science has decided marijuana, cannabis does have medicinal, valuable properties, and recreational marijuana is not as dangerous as many, many other drugs where we should be focusing our criminal justice effort. Did I answer the question? I kind of tend to talk all around things.
You did.
Just slap me and tell me to get back on topic. If I
You got about 1 minute on
Okay.
your time here left.
Yes, sir.
If it's okay, if we go a tad bit over. And this one's kind of one we're just going to ask everyone. What's one thing about you most people don't know and you haven't talked about on the campaign trail?
I don't talk much about what I like to do for fun, because I tend to be kind of an all-business guy when I'm dealing with politics, but The Mike Savoca for fun is I like to canoe. So I've canoed the Cowlitz, the Nisqually, the Black. I like to hike and I like to bike. So last year, I'm too old to climb Mount Rainier anymore. I have climbed Mount Rainier, but I can only get myself up to Camp Muir these days. So I climbed to about 10,000 feet up the the Muir ice field. I'm a physically active person, even though I'm overweight and I'm kind of fat, bald, and ugly. I still like to exercise. I get on my bike, and we have the Chehalis Western Trail. It goes from Rainier all the way to Woodard Bay, and so I set a challenge for myself. My dream was to do the STP. I don't think I'll ever do that, but it was to do 100 miles in a day. So I went from my house to Woodard Bay and back. That was 50 miles. Had a 20-minute lunch, got back on the bike at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and went back. And I came in, the driveway, my wife's looking there, it's 9 o'clock at night, it's getting dark, it was the end of July. My tongue's hanging down to the brakes on the front wheel of the bicycle, sweat pouring down my face. And she said, wow, you made it. And I said, wow, you didn't have a lot of faith, did you? She said, I had the phone, I was ready to come pick you up in Olympia, But there were people on the trail that were actually passing me jogging, so I don't want to brag, I averaged between 8 and 9 miles per hour. But I did 100 miles an hour. I did 100 miles in a day. So I like sports, and I especially like things like skiing and hiking and biking and stuff like that. So a lot of people don't know that about me because you look at me and you think like this guy likes to just watch football on TV, right? So, that's on film too, isn't it?
Very nice to meet you.
Oh well, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.